my name's Heather, and I'm going to be making a bread for my recipe for a kitchen science class. So the first ingredient that I'm going to be adding is yeast. And this recipe calls for 1 packet of yeast into 2 cups of warm water. The yeast is going to add flavor and help to aerate the dough. And the reason that we put it into warm water is because warm water helps the yeast to activate. And you want the yeast to activate so it'll start the fermentation process. So the fermentation process is going to allow the yeast to grow and produce energy in the form of an alcohol or a carbon dioxide. So as you can see here, I've already started to make the yeast right there in that little cup. So that's mixed with 1 packet of yeast and 2 cups of warm water. And then in my mixer here, the recipe calls for 5 to 7 cups of flour. To begin with, I'm going to use 3 cups of flour and then add the salt in. The flour is going to be the gluten portion of the recipe, and the gluten is going to be used to bond the ingredients together because it contains like a protein that basically is like a long chain of amino acids. So we're going to go ahead and mix that together. So I've just mixed the flour and the salt together. Next it says to mix the water and the yeast with the salt and the flour. Now what that's going to do is the yeast has been going through the fermentation process, and that will allow it to create air in the form of like bubbles from the carbon dioxide. So what that will do is the oxygen will help the flour to start producing the protein that then creates like a chain of amino acids. So right now I'm adding the rest of the yeast into the flour and salt mixture. So what this is doing right here is, again, like I said, creating like the protein bonds that will start the process of making it into like a more of a elasticy and stretchy kind of dough. So the recipe then says to keep adding flour, which again is going to keep aerating and adding air to that flour mixture will begin to make it more elastic. So once this is done mixing, what we're going to do is we're going to knead it, and that kneading process will help again to get more air into the dough and allowing it to create more protein bonds. It's starting to get a little out of control here, but it's okay. So after we knead the dough and it's all incorporated, what we're going to do is we're going to let the dough stand for about 30 to 40 minutes. And what that's going to do is let the dough rest and allow the protein molecules to bunch up and become more of a uniform dough. And that will allow it to be like dense and more of an, like have a bread-like consistency. So the dough is starting to finish up. As you can see in there, it's kind of got a more dough-like consistency. So that means that the glutens have started to react and are starting to become proteins and link in there together and form the dough. So what I'm doing here is just kneading the dough to kind of combine a little bit more of the flour and the mixture of the yeast and the water together, and kind of create more of the oxygen getting into the flour mixture, the dough mixture, to create more of the proteins. And then we're going to let it sit, and then we'll bake it. And that's how you make that. That's how you make bread. So this is the dough after it's rose for about 40 minutes, and then punched it down and rolled it up into a little loaf ball, and I'm going to bake it, and then it's going to be bread. And so that's the end of this video. Thank you so much.